We've been walking by the place for 10 years, you know, since the doors closed, and it was just so sad to see that our square was thriving. We've got this theater with so much potential sitting there. I had bought the building catty corner over here, the old Sears building, and we were kind of looking around. I was walking with my realtor after closing the deal, and we came in front of the Texas Theater. And I looked to my left, and I looked back at him, and I said, man, if that thing ever comes up for sale, I'll jump on it immediately. I won't hesitate. And so I just made basically a blank check offer. I said, whatever we got to do to get it done. And he goes, okay, I'll call him. Called me back an hour later. He said, you got a deal if you're serious about it. I said, great. He said, the only condition is no inspections, as is, and you can't go inside. So, I mean, who buys a building where you can't at least go inside and inspect it? I just had my memory from 10 years ago of how the place looked, and I thought, well, you know, it can't be that bad, and I was a little bit wrong. All right, here we go. Day one, Texas Theater. It's the courthouse. Beautiful downtown Waxahachie, Texas, July 27th. As you can see here, the place tried to burn down. So my wife and I, we eat at a local Mexican food restaurant on the square a lot. We're in there eating, having a good time, talking about the theater. This is the day before the closing when we actually get the keys. And we hear fire trucks going by. And we had just signed our checks. We were headed out, and I said, let's go see what that's about. We're like, oh my gosh, the marquee's on fire. And if you know the history of the theater, the place has burned down 3 times already. And I thought, what are the odds of this happening the night before we close? Luckily, the fire department is just a stone's throw away. The call was quick, and they were there before we could even make the jog over and had the water hoses on it. I think it was a way of the theater speaking to us and saying, hey, this ain't gonna be as easy as you think it's gonna be. But we're still in. We looked at each other, and she kind of maybe looked at me a little bit crazy, but I said, we're still doing it. I'm still in. So this is raw. Just the way it was left about 10 years ago when it closed down. All right, so like I said, no power. I took the meter because the place caught on fire out front. It's the old kitchen with a bunch of stuff falling everywhere, old audio equipment. I have no idea what to do with that, but somebody does. Going to be a lot of good people working on this project. All the old original seating, the stage, the door for the back exit. They blew it off the hinge. They had to do what they had to do, I understand. Old lighting system way up there. It's the rest of the seating. Gonna do a full renovation, bring this old girl back to life. Let's get started.
Keep believing, don't let them get you down. Can you feel it? A change is gonna come.
One thing that I promised people from the very start is that the day I get the keys is the day I start working. I will say I was very naive. I think the fire out front was a warning with what was ahead, but I thought we would come in here and most of it was cosmetic. You know, I thought most of the problems would be maybe the speakers are still good, we'll still use the screen, and what I would do is I came up here at night without anybody else, without any noises, and I was really staring at the stage, which sounds really silly. The brick behind me, the burnt brick, the history back there was covered up with sheetrock. I had no idea that was back there. So one day I got a sledgehammer and I took a little piece of sheetrock and I pulled it back and I was like, oh my gosh, this is burnt brick. It's like soot on this brick, it's history. So we cleared that out. It was a step at a time. The old spotlight from back in the day is still upstairs and it still works. So stuff like that is what made it really cool. As we went along, we found these different things. They weren't apparent off the start. It was as we got into the project, we realized more and more that there's more history over here. There's more things that have happened over here. And my job along the way was to make sure that we preserve that. I would visualize the people in here and the experience they were having and how the room was currently laid out and how we could make it a little bit better. And then on top of that, we learned we had some challenges, you know, making it ADA compliant, making it code compliant to today's standards, because it's not a big theater. And at that point I realized I was outgunned. We could do some stuff, we demoed the production booth, but overall I needed some help. Once again, a common theme in my life, I needed to find a mentor. So I found Tracy Jordan. Tracy Jordan ran the Majestic for many years. He's been on a lot of theater projects. I reached out to him and I said, hey, we're starting this project. Can you give me some advice? I want to learn from you. So we started touring theaters around DFW. We toured the new ISIS in Fort Worth, and the one that really stuck was the Kessler. Jeffrey at the Kessler was so kind with his time, and he gave us a couple hours in this place, and he explained where they started, what the vision was, how long it took, and what it is today, and what they've learned along the way. And you can't buy that kind of information. And what we learned from Jeffrey in these small venues is that they're intimate. They're different. We don't have a huge room where we can pack 1,000 people in here. It has to be intimate. The sound has to be right. The experience has to be right, not only for the audience, but for the artists. Because we're establishing this place as a dot on the map again that's been dark for 10 years. A little ways into the project, I got a call from Tim Eaton. And he's like, John, this is Tim Eaton, if you remember me. I'm like, of course I remember you, man. You're the guy who's crazy and let me in here back in the day. What's going on? He's like, I'm looking for my next project. I heard what you're doing. Would you like to meet and have coffee? And I said, absolutely, let's hear it. And so we met and had coffee, and Tim brought this stack of papers with tape on it, and in the coffee shop, he starts taping stuff up to the wall, ideas for the theater. And Tim's a very talented guy when it comes to booking acts, and he's a true showman at heart. I remember Tim as the guy behind the bar that had everybody laughing, that was a storyteller. And I thought if we could have that dynamic back in here with what I'm doing to support from behind, we would really have something special.
You didn't get that on tape, did you?
Yep.
And I thought, man, what a great mix that would be for the theater. So we didn't hesitate. We grabbed Tim Eaton, we brought him back.
He said, I'd like for you to come back. A lot of people are coming back. There's people coming back to the theater. There's people coming back to their hometowns. So if there's anything about the theater, it's bringing people back together as a community.
So the sign came as an idea that was with our original philosophy when we started this project, which is preservation. Not just the brick behind us, but the sign. So we went to the Ellis County Museum and I said, can you get me every picture you've got of the theater over the years? And I saw one that had a giant vertical Texas sign, and people are still riding horseback in front of it. But I thought, man, they really did a nice job. Like, that is a huge sign, you know, everything's bigger in Texas was still alive back then. Let's go back to history once again and have that sign remade. So I went and presented it to the Historical Society to get approval first. We could have got a round of applause, man. They were like, yeah, let's do it. When the crane showed up to put that sign on the building, we had folks gathering all around the courthouse. And I was like, we need to put some kind of lighting ceremony together. It was like a 24-hour notice.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You can't go wrong if you go back to where you came from, back to your roots. And this place is my roots. Waxahachie, KBC, Texas Theater. You guys care. You guys care to see this come back to life.
It's been closed for 10, 15 years, and we just came down here to see what Mr. Garrett had done with it.
You know, when I walk by it, it makes me feel emotional because I had no idea. You know, I just thought it was the right thing to do. It was overwhelming and deep for me because I didn't realize what I was doing, to be honest with you. I walked by this place one day and took a look left and said, I'm here, I have the resources, let's do it. I wasn't thinking about the reaction. I just felt like it was the right thing to do. And in the sign lighting, it makes me feel emotional, but it hit me what it meant to everybody.
I grew up in the Texas Theater.
We grew up here going to the movies. We have fond memories here.
This is a sign that was on this building back in the 30s and the 40s, and then it went away sometime in the 50s. So to bring it back is important for everybody in this community. There's people here that have said they grew up here, they worked here, their parents grew up here. So it's really important for the community to get that sign back up there that says the Texas Theater.
It's my youth, it's our history, it's our heritage. I'm proud of it.
That old sign was not available, so it had to be made based on photos of what it looked like then. And so these guys did a great job rebuilding this beautiful sign. But it says Texas, it's all about Texas.
It was just something that God put on my heart. I didn't ask my wife like I was supposed to. I think I just told her. I called her after I had the deal done and I was like, can I do this? She's like, well, it sounds like it's kind of already done, but I was like, yeah, but I just want to check with you, you know? And things worked out. She has always believed in me. She's, you know, behind the scenes. She doesn't get enough credit. We've got 4 kids and she's got her hands full with that, but she's always there to support me, you know. I have a lot of wild, crazy ideas and she's the one that reels me back and says, that's crazy, or yeah, you're onto something there. And when I said the Texas Theater, she's like, yes, that needs to happen. Let's do it.
We saw this for so long, for, you know, close to 10 years, just, you know, be dark and dreary and closed up. And then when you see a new sign and the lights are on and there's actually things going on, I don't think there's anyone that has lived in Waxahachie for a long time or grew up here that does not have a Texas Theater memory.
My mom sold tickets in the ticket booth.
My mother's little sister used to work here when she was in high school, so I always heard stories about the Texas Theater.
And my dad was the projectionist.
They made out with their first girl upstairs on the balcony.
7th grade was extremely important for me in this movie theater, where I had my first kiss.
My grandfather, who is in his mid-90s, he's still alive and he's doing great, but he's played on this stage with this bluegrass band. He was in bluegrass music for over 50 years, and I remember coming here and seeing that.
It's a special, special place.
You know, I don't necessarily look at it as something that belongs to me. Yes, I bought it, I'm the owner, but it really belongs to the community. It belongs to all the people that have the stories here. And that's what we heard a lot of from the start. Folks coming in and saying they had their first date here. That's what makes this place cool. There's history everywhere in this place.
This theater tells the history of the town. The theater has come and gone. It's been burnt several times. It went out of business a couple of times, but they always persevered and came back and brought it back to life. And I think that's what everybody in this community is excited about. It's been brought back to life again. For 10 years, for it to be set and dormant was unacceptable.
And I don't think there was a time that my family drove through the square that my oldest son, Christian, didn't say, we need to buy that theater. So when John and his wife bought the theater, we were like, awesome, something cool is gonna happen.
Now that John's got it, it's really going to make a difference in this community.
The Texas Theater is kind of the gateway as you're coming into Waxahachie. So to have a big vertical sign, you can see it as you're coming down Main before you even really see our courthouse. So it sets the tone, and that's a very important thing to us.
This is the opening weekend. That's where we are this weekend. Today we're starting it with the sign and the lighting and the ribbon cutting ceremony with the Chamber of Commerce. And it was really trying to welcome John and his family, welcome the theater back. So tonight was big. Friday night is the big grand opening. And that's Jack Ingram. Jack Ingram used to play here in Miranda. Aunt Lambert would open for him. So that's a huge moment for us to bring back somebody of Jack's stature into the opening weekend. And then we close it out this first weekend with Brandon Ryder, who was the last Texas country act to play in this building before it was shut down in 2012.
It's been a while since I've been here. I think I like what you've done with the joint.
First show Kinks, It's expected. So that's Gary, used to do the bookings. This is in front of the women's bathroom, back when they had the psychedelic paint and whatnot, but there's Jack and there's Miranda. Wow. So pretty cool, cool. KBC in town, allegedly was the first one to play our music.
Okay.
Wrote a little note. You know, Gary, the first one to play my music. Thanks for believing in me.
I love playing these kind of places. This is kind of like, this is the size that I enjoy because you have immediate interaction, and yet it still has that listening room sort of vibe.
Do you have the logo changed? Put the logo on the screen?
How are we going to present this to the world? This is probably the biggest moment in my life. So Tim had the idea that we put together a video. We commissioned someone to show the history of the place, to take them through chronologically the fires and the history. And we've got this receding screen behind us that we've installed that can come down and come back up. So we wanted to play that video for the people and then have the screen come up and show that exposed brick back there, the soot that's still on it, the history that's back there. This is a place that's burned down many times. It's gone through the Great Depression. It's gone through the ups and downs of life, but it's always come back. And we wanted to show that to the people.
The story of the Texas Theater begins in 1893 when fire destroys the wooden structures on the north block of the courthouse square. The 1894 rebuilt two-story brick structure housed Waxahachie's earliest moving picture theaters, beginning with the Theatorium in 1907, followed by the Majestic in 1909 and the Dixie in 1912. By 1925, the theater was transformed into a two-story theater with a balcony. The greatest changes to the building will be made in the fall of 1934, in the middle of the Great Depression. The Dixie begins transformation into a new theater, with all the building except the exterior walls torn down and rebuilt. In 1934, the Ritz opens with its magnificent edifice and modernistic design, giving Waxahachie a small-town version of a big city movie palace. On a cold winter's night in 1938, tragedy strikes again. A fire starting in the balcony guts the theater once again. By spring of '39, the rebuilt Ritz opens as the Texas Theater, one of the finest small city theaters in the state. The latest in lighting, projection, screen, and air conditioning are among its features. Less than 2 years later, the Texas Theater is once again fire-wrecked, this time by a fire that starts in the heating system. And on May 1st, 1942, the new Texas Theater opens, further establishing Waxahachie as the Cinema Entertainment Center. Over the last 8 decades, the Texas has continued to be an entertainment legend for Waxahachie. The facade changed many times over the years, but the entertainment continued. In the early 2000s, Texas country music took on a presence in the theater. Acts like Jack Ingram, Miranda Lambert, and Maren Morris graced the stage. After being closed for 10 years, the Texas Theater saw another resurgence in 2022 when local residents John and Alyssa Garrett purchased the theater. For the past 127 years of life on the square, the spirit of this very theater has survived fires, weather, and war. With each seeming defeat, it is rebuilt, relived, and reimagined like no other theater of its era. The scars from the past and dreams for the future will forever honor the perseverance of the ones that came before us. This is the new Texas Theater.
I could hear them cheering during the film. I hadn't taken the stage yet, and that told me that it meant something to them personally. Their memories here, the continued memories, and the generations that will come after me that will get to experience and enjoy this place.
Who's excited to hear Jack Ingram in just a minute?
Going into that night, State Rep Brian Harrison was going to introduce me and give a little speech and say a few words about my history and Waxahachie and the pride that we take in things like this and present us with an award. It truly was overwhelming.
I've got a certificate to give you, sir. All right, I'll read it to you real quick. It says the state of Texas, House of Representatives. It's a certificate of recognition. Representative Brian Harrison congratulates the Texas Theater and John and Alyssa Garrett on the grand reopening of this great historic venue, March 31st, 2023.
In 1938, the place burned down. Well, they rebuilt it as the Texas Theater in 1939, and the grand opening date was March 31st. So here we were. It makes me feel emotional, you know, thinking about it. I mean, it's just, you can't accept those things as a coincidence. Then again on March 31st, here we are at the grand opening. So I learned this as I'm going on the stage with the mic in my hand and the band over my back shoulder, and here I am, a kid that just, I never thought I would be in a position like this, and it made it really special.
When I was 20 years old, I got my first job at the radio station in town. I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew I liked radio, and I wanted to learn. So the Texas Theater was operating back then. Tim Eaton let me in the door, let me interview the artists.
Tim Eaton would allow me to come in here and interview the artists, which in my mind is crazy because I had no training on interviewing artists, and I was really nervous. My hands were shaking. I think the first one was Brandon Ryder. He had his tour bus parked out front. I walked on there with a little hand recorder that I borrowed from my mom. My hand was shaking, and all that stuff was the foundation of what you see today. Without that, this wouldn't happen.
So it was a special place in my heart because it's where I come from, and I don't think you can go wrong if you get back to where you come from, and you give back. I don't come from much, and to be here with all of you and the awards and everything it's overwhelming, really. So I got to give the credit to God.
It's the history. It's the history of this place and my own personal history. It wasn't something really in the cards for a guy like me at a young age. I had big dreams, but I never really believed in them. And as I looked out across that room, I remembered all those nights that I sat up here and I thought, we gotta persevere, man. We gotta get through this. It's gonna be worth it. I moved here in 2004. I was a freshman in high school. To be honest with you, I was a troubled youth. We moved around a lot. My parents kind of thought if we changed towns or we went to a small town, that would keep me out of trouble. The only problem is that I was the problem, so I followed me everywhere I went. But I landed in Waxahachie. It was a much smaller town back in 2004. It was different. I liked it. I liked the vibe. I kind of got to understand that there was a lot of history here and there were some cool people here. But ultimately, I grew up in Austin, so I kind of have a really collective background, and I think that's where my love for music and the arts and things like that came from. 19 years old, my uncle was the bureau chief of Time magazine for a while, so I grew up around a journalist, and I had a fascination with the stories he would cover. So naturally I thought, I want to do something like that with my life. I didn't know exactly what it looked like, but I started going to college for it. And then I found out we had a local radio station here in Waxahachie. So I put a resume together that didn't have any radio experience or any media experience on it. I walked in, I said, hey guys, I'll work for free, I'll take out the trash. I just want to learn. I just want to be here and be part of it. They called me back and they said, well, you can't work for free, but we'll pay you. We'd be glad to have you. So I was on my way. I started as a board op, running production, just kind of being in the mix. Every now and then I would get to do remotes, and I immediately became hooked. I found something that I loved and that I could pursue. Local small radio is a great place to learn, a great place to start, but I wanted more. I wanted to continue furthering my career, so I went on to Sports Radio 1310 The Ticket in Dallas. I was a sporting news anchor, and that's when I met Jeremy. I knew that Jeremy was an alumni of KBUC, and a common thread throughout my stories that I always look for a mentor. I always look for someone that's gone before me that I can learn from.
He would be texting me at 2 and 3 in the morning via social media, and I would answer his questions because I saw myself in him, somebody who had that hunger and desire, and what can I do and how do I do it, and I'll do it whatever it takes. That's how he got the job at KBEC. That's how he got the job with me. I was like, we got to bring this guy on.
So I moved up into syndicated radio with Jeremy, and I learned a ton. I learned what it meant to have fun on the air and be creative and just get into that realm, and I loved it. The only problem was I had just gotten married and we were having our first kid, and money was tight, and it's a hard way to make a living. Some DJs have to move around a lot and things like that. Ultimately, Jeremy moved on to another position. I got offered the host job of the syndicated show with the caveat that I had to move to Nashville, and it just wasn't something that we wanted to do. Again, we love Waxahachie. We want to stay in Waxahachie. This is where our family is. This is what we love, and I wasn't willing to give that up just to pursue my own hopes and dreams. Times were really tight, and we decided to start a party rental company. Then in about 3 years' time, we had built the business up enough where we could go full-time into it. We started scaling our business. We started buying other businesses and understanding the cash flows and the economies of scale there. And one day we looked up and we had done $1 million in revenue, and we were just dumbfounded. Unfortunately, that was the year before COVID. I laid off all but 2 of my employees. I said, we got to get creative, we got to survive. And that led us into the disaster business. When a hurricane hits, we set up base camps or military camps in different areas. And so we branched into that, which led into much larger revenues, which we had options at that point in life. We were far past anything that we had learned or knew what to do with, but we decided once again that Waxahachie is where we want to invest our money. It was the right time in Waxahachie. Our square was coming alive, a lot of people are coming to town, and we looked at these old abandoned buildings and we said, hey, we're in a position where we could make some change here, so let's start doing it. Our first investment was KBEC. I go back to my roots. I go back to the people that I remember treated me right and are part of my story, and I feel like it's my obligation to take care of them and be a steward of whatever that thing is. So KBEC was the start. I got called by a guy one day and he said, hey, the station's for sale, are you interested? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm interested, of course, let's do it. It took us a year to hash out the deal, but nonetheless, we got it done. And the same staff is there that I grew up learning with.
Hey, it's all right. You just got another man that's got the keys, right?
All these years later, and he's still saving our lives.
Jeremy was actually kind of on his way out, if not already out. Now, I think it's just crazy they end up working together, and now we're all back together again. It has come full circle.
It's a crazy story. I love it.
And that's what makes this story great. It was a desire of John, since this is where he started, that someday he wanted to own it.
I had the thought in my mind of next is the Texas Theater. A lot of artists don't remember this place. They don't know that Miranda Lambert grew up playing here. This was one of the first places she played when she was 16. Jack is the one that brought Miranda.
Last time I was here was about 15 years ago, I think, and Miranda Lambert opened the show. She's come a long way since then. I'm still in the same spot. But I'm very glad to be here.
But it meant a lot to me that he kind of recognized that we poured the heart and soul into it, and I saw a little excitement out of him to be the one to bring it back.
Any artist that comes and plays can't believe how cool it is, how great it sounds. It's very intimate.
And I think the artists like that, and I think it also opens us up for the opportunity to do television, to do intimate series. Because artists like to go back, like I do as a person, to where they came from. And this place allows them to do it.
We both had history growing up here, knowing that John and Alyssa and their kids and their family love Ellis County and are committed to making it what it is, bringing this beautiful place back to an existence, and these new families getting to make memories. That's why I was so interested in joining John again, is because he's doing things every single day for this community.
Meat Church is going to be moving next door, that has a unbelievably loyal following all across the United States. I actually learned how to cook a brisket off of Meat Church videos. Matt Pittman does a great job.
We had no idea that we were going to move in next door and there'd be some synergy between us, but to have this theater up and running with amazing music that we know, comedy acts, movies, I mean, it's awesome.
So to have a brand like that next to us, we're also developing a bookstore soda fountain, kind of a classic vibe over on the other corner, and that really completes the square.
He came back and just blew my mind as that what his passion was and what he was trying to do with this place. And I'm blown away.
And he's not doing this to make tons of money, he's giving back.
And I heard him just a few weeks ago say, money's purpose is to do good things. And this is a really good example of one of the many good things that John Garrett has done, and I'm glad he did it here in Waxahachie.
It's not just me. You see me on the camera today, but behind me are hundreds of people that I work with, that I interact with, that make me better every day. So to be part of that is truly humbling, and it's exciting. Waxahachie is an exciting place to be, and I'm so glad to be part of it.